I think people need to understand, in order to rank on SEO, it's not just the time, it's the effort you need to put into it. So this effort sometimes can be very pricey, and you need to put down a lot of money before you see a single dollar of return. And that's like a gatekeeper for many, many people.
Welcome to What Gets Measured, a NinjaCat podcast about marketing, performance management, metrics, and effectiveness. Because what gets measured gets managed. I'm your host, Jake Sanders. Brian Dordevic is the founder of Alpha Efficiency. He's a marketing strategist and coder with years of experience working with brands and businesses of every size, helping them optimize their digital marketing strategies to execute complex solutions with the purpose of driving meaningful experience flows. And he's here to talk smack about SEO metrics that matter. Brian, thank you for being here.
Hey, Jacob, thank you for having me.
So search engine optimization has been around for a while now, but it feels like sometimes the definition isn't clear. Some folks are making the same mistakes. How has this space evolved over the years, and how has it stayed the same?
So I think the two building blocks of SEO didn't really change. And I think that people that haven't been in the industry as long as I have, so I've been in the industry for 12 years, they're counting on what Google is doing in this particular moment. But these two building blocks have never really fundamentally changed. Besides having like a sound website, which is a good prerequisite for most of the SEO campaigns, I think people really need to pay attention to content and backlinks. And there's always like a heated debate. The content is the way to go. The backlinks are the way to go. And the truth to the matter is these two strategies that are, both of them are required for a successful SEO campaign. They have diverse strength at any given point in time. So if the content game is caught up by the SEO professionals far and wide, then the only differentiating factor to the algorithm becomes the backlinks and vice versa. So I've seen Google play the changes on the algorithm depending on how saturated certain strategies have been. So there's always a pendulum swing from backlinks to content and from content to backlinks. We are currently in the phase of Google's algorithm where content has more dominance. But I'm never going to think that it's always going to be the case because SEOs are catching up. Like the last couple of years, we've utilized data, machine learning, in combination to produce content at scale, as well as define what Google thinks is a quality content. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we've been utilizing lately is tapping into Google's knowledge graph to become experts in the field of any content that we're creating for the brand. So the knowledge graph allows us to tap into Google's BART algorithm, as well as allowing us to utilize what Google calls natural language processing, mm-hmm. NLP, mm-hmm. to be distinguished from the mumbo jumbo sales magic gimmicky stuff NLP from the 90s. Like I need to make that assertion that there's a big difference between natural language processing and neuro-linguistic programming. It's not the same thing.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they carry the same abbreviation, but NLP allows Google to understand the semantical structures behind the keywords. So Google will know if you know what you're writing about. But for us to bridge that gap, so you don't have to hire an expert on the field every time you're trying to write something, you can pull a query from Google Cloud Platform, which is their competitor to the AWS, and you can extract this data from their GCP platform, mm-hmm. as well as tapping into the data that's publicly available, what is already ranking on the first 100 or first 10 pages of Google for the keywords that you're trying to tap into. So you can utilize some apps. There's really cool apps out there that are helping you extract ranking data for keywords. And I think the software evolved a lot. I will mention three main contenders to the throne that are riding this wave of Google's dominance in in the content,
Mm.
meaning that Google's algorithm is giving dominance to the content. So there's 3 tools that we're wholeheartedly recommending. And they have varying prices. They start from, I would say, $75 to $100 per month.
Mm-hmm.
And then it depends how many writers you have
Right.
on board. But Surfer SEO is the oldest one. Then you have Writers Zen, which is our kind of favorite. And they're very similar between the two. And Neuron Writer that is very focused on the NLP. And we interchangeably use a couple of these tools to varying degrees of success. But one thing that we learned for a fact, they pull a lot of data systematically and give you like a one place to work your entire on-page SEO strategy from. So the SEO strategy is probably one of the most overlooked elements. I've consulted and talked to hundreds of businesses in the last year, discussing their existing SEO strategies, their initiatives. And what I've encountered, a lot of businesses that they were just blogging haphazardly, just like get like a content editor that doesn't really do SEO, and then they try to talk about the topics, sometimes even without consulting the keywords. But sometimes you would have editors on the team just picking the topics of what they think is valuable without really looking into the data of the knowledge graph, without looking into the Search Console and putting that together. It led to a lot of fragmented SEO efforts that would lead to a lot of disappointments, and people would be like, we're not really getting results. We're putting all this money into content writers. We're putting all this money into the blog posts or articles, and we're not really seeing much. That's because SEO strategy and people that know how to do SEO are very rare. There's a lot of people that say that they know how to do SEO and they try to execute, but they don't have enough of the real world experience, so to say, of actually doing the SEO to be able to execute on it. A lot of courses that I'm seeing, they're talking a good game. They're talking about all these other stuff that are not really as critical a ranking factor. Like you can get on an SEO course for web developers, and they're talking about technical optimizations, et cetera, and how to make the website easily crawlable for Google, which is great. It's all great things that need to happen. But without convincing Google that your website is an authority on the topic that you want to drive the leads for, without Google having a full conviction that you are the expert on the topic, and Google knows. Google knows if you're the expert on the topic because their knowledge graph is so deep. It's far and wide. They crawl majority of the known web. They have it on their index, and they see the correlations on the big data side of things of how keywords and concepts are getting internally linked amongst themselves. So when they crawl the web, when we crawl the keyword with Writers, and we can see what is the most common sentiment on the topic of the articles that are ranking at the top of Google. So if the overall sentiment is positive and you're writing negatively on the topic, you're diminishing your chances of ranking for that particular keyword. So before we decide what we are going to write, we will also know what is the tone we will use when we're writing about that particular article.
Ooh. So it's so amazing how technical it can be, but it does come down to having good content connected to an actual strategy. And you mentioned something really interesting, was that a lot of people are paying for tons of content to be made. Maybe they're paying for that technical, on-page stuff, crawlability. But when it comes to setting up and measuring a successful SEO program, what do you think marketers should consider, and how should they be tracking their progress?
So there's a couple of things that need to be taken in consideration when content is being published. First, one of the reasons why we are publishing content in the first place is the content frequency. And content frequency is very important SEO metric because it measures how frequently you are publishing the content. So you need to keep the baseline consistent at all times. So if you commit to one blog post per week, that is something that will establish your content frequency. So stick to the content frequency. Give Google a reason to come back to your site every week. The threshold for us to get some results that we're seeing the best results with our clients is when we are hitting around 10 blog posts per month, which is around 2 articles per week. And I'm saying that is a threshold because I've managed and optimized websites that had 15 articles per week, which is 60 articles per month.
Whoa!
And
slow down.
So when we were utilizing that massive amounts of content to optimize the website, one of the important criteria that we were determining what will happen next is what kind of the anchor texts are we utilizing inside of these articles. And these anchor texts are defining an overarching strategy as to what is going to happen next. Like what are the keywords that we're going for? So let's say we're trying to optimize a website for 5 different keywords, and we're publishing 15 articles per week. And that means that 3 articles would have a heavy focus towards one keyword cluster. So 3 articles would link to one page, the other 3 articles would link to the page number 2, page number 3, etc., until we fill out that gap. And we would mix around these anchor texts to make it look more organic and natural, or to cover a cluster of keywords that we're trying to optimize these 5 pillar pages for. So we would honor the pyramid structure for all of our content. It's kind of like a Wikipedia. You have a Wikipedia at the top, and then you have the categories, subcategories, subcategories, concepts, and how concepts relate to each other. That's why Wikipedia is ranking so well on Google even today. I know it lost lots of its potency, but I think that the Wikipedia is the best example of internal linking that makes sense, that is very user-centric, and it serves the purpose of organizing the knowledge of the user base. So that was a really cool thing about using Wikipedia as a poster child for a good SEO. And if you understand how many people are there on the back end of Wikipedia that are curating these articles, so thousands and thousands of hobbyists pouring in hundreds of personal hours in order to curate the topics that they are passionate about. So like you become a Wikipedia editor of your own company, and you're providing that editorial knowledge from your company's angle and a point of view. So
thinking about tracking progress, though, I mean, like how you're using, I would assume, another tool to look at the backlinks and the rankings, you know, as they're going up and down. What are some of those metrics that you think are very important to look at? You know, I mean, it seems like a lot of it is an organizational and intentional strategic approach in the front end. But when you're on the back end trying to see if everything worked, do you just use Google and see if you show up, or how can folks track their progress in these campaigns?
So one of the important data points that we are losing as SEOs is Google Search Console information. So when you connect the Google Search Console to your site, it starts giving you the insights into how many impressions do your articles gather. And once you publish the article on your website, did it get indexed inside of Google? And if it did get indexed and crawled, is it actually being presented? So sometimes it can get crawled, but not indexed. So you can see all these problems that are happening on a page-by-page basis of your website. So when you have a clear-cut understanding of what's happening on a page-by-page basis, like sometimes we have some articles that we tried to optimize for a certain keyword, and we wrote a really good and long piece, but Google didn't feel that our focus keyword was worth their time. So this whole great article that we published and report like 20 hours worth of work into, it's like 4,000 words long. It didn't even get indexed.
Wow.
It's not ranking for its own keywords. So we missed the mark on optimizing that piece. But then we have some other articles that are just like 1,200 words long, that are rocking the first page for their keyword focus. So it gives us like an insight. Okay, we really kind of fell short on this article. We gotta either change the keywords or republish or repurpose the content from this article and try to do it again. So we can see through Search Console a lot of results and how quickly we're getting them. Like how long does it take us from publishing the article until the point that that article gets indexed and ranked. So we try to extract this data from Google Search Console because Google Search Console is allowing us to store the data only 16 months back, which is not enough, and then you're losing a lot of historical data. So we've been pulling that data automatically via Zapier and some other scraping tools into Google Sheets. And I think that there's a lot of knowledge power that resides in having this historical Search Console data.
What? So speaking from, maybe you're a budget strapped marketing team and you're putting all of your strategy into SEO. Like we're just going to show up and then the business is going to show up. But sometimes you have to do some paid stuff, and that might also affect your SEO. How do you suggest marketers both in-house and on the agency side balance the budgets in between organic and paid?
So when you start making results on any kind of search traffic, you tend to generate an addiction because Google search, or just search in general, when it's executed properly, is driving the closest results to direct response marketing in the digital world. Like the only comparable form of marketing would be direct mailers and email marketing. So search marketing, whether it's organic or pay-per-click, is very high up there alongside of the direct mailers and email marketing campaigns, which places it very highly. The ROI on certain keywords is just insane. So what we've seen that Google sometimes puts a cap on a keyword. So for example, for us in the web design space, you cannot get to click under $12 to $15.
Oh yeah. Well, and I worked in legal, and some of those keywords are hundreds of dollars. I mean, like almost like thousands. I mean, it's insane. And it's really about competition and stuff. So I totally agree. And if you can dominate that, that's good, but it's costly.
So running PPC campaigns is very expensive, but the value-added benefit of that is the fact that you're getting instantaneous presence on the server. It puts you on the map. People get to know you. I'm getting inquiries from directory campaigns, from PPC campaigns all day long. It's really a valuable traffic that brings you the relevant people in front of you in real time.
Right.
But the cost is really high. Like you might be running in a negative depending on your niche and how valuable does Google think your traffic is. So if you're a personal injury attorney, good luck. You're competing with these guys that have $50 to $100 per click budget, and they can sustain it. And they want to get that impression before you. And if you're a small rank and file guy, you really don't stand a chance.
Wow.
So I think that the SEO left a little bit of fighting room for the small guys that they can still in 2022 by utilizing clever execution of content and observing the data points that Google does give them for free through the Search Console, allowing them a fighting chance until they grow up a little bit and they can afford some of these keywords as well. Like I want to point this out. I think in order for people to understand how much they need to invest into SEO versus how much they need to invest into PPC, they will need to understand what is the balance, what is the ratio of people clicking on the ads versus the ratio of how many people are clicking on the organic results. And Google has worked very, very hard to keep these two groups balanced out. And while a couple of years, 5 to 10 years ago, you could see 10% of the audience clicking on the Google ads. Nowadays, because they're rewarding advertisers that are providing optimal customer experience for their end users, I think a lot of people just gave up on even looking at the organic side of things. and focused on providing or just clicking the ads. So that number went from 10% to 25% of people clicking exclusively on the ads, completely disregarding the organic results.
Right.
So 1 in 4 people is not even clicking on the organic side of things.
Wow.
They're perfectly happy clicking on the ads themselves in order to obtain what they need to get, which is oddly enough because all these people are paying money to be at those things, at those placements. So that leads us to an understanding that if you are clicking on the ads, you might be paying the most expensive option. But as I'm going to play a devil's advocate over here, people that are doing SEO, they are typically yielding around 5 times cheaper lead cost than those that are doing the Google ads. So for $1 of results generated on Google ads, you would generate like $5 of results on the organic side. Well, the thing is, 75% of people click on the organic. And if you're number one, you might be getting like 30-40% of that search volume. The number two would be like 20%, and then 10%, and then split evenly in these small numbers going towards the bottom of the page.
Right.
So the thing is, I think that a lot of people, when they're talking about SEO, the majority of the SEO are regurgitating this timeline to results. And I've done a little YouTube video on this where I explain that you can't really measure SEO in terms of like time, but you can measure it in terms of effort. I think that a good example would be a client of ours that publishes 2 articles per month versus at my old job, we were publishing 60 articles per month. So in 1 month, my old employer was generating content as much as some people generate in 3 years. So you need to measure apples to apples. That is how you will determine how much SEO you need to put into something, and then from that you can reverse engineer the timeline. Hey, I can afford 50 articles per month. Now, let's see how these 50 articles per month are translating into real world results. Like I don't want to talk about the time, but because when I'm looking at the SEO competition for any particular keyword, I need to see a holistic viewpoint of that particular company, where they are with their content. Do you have 100 articles on their site? Do you have 10? Seeing companies have 20 articles on their entire website, and they want to buy backlinks. You do not have a backlink problem. You don't have any content. So you need to go back to the content. But to answer your previous question, how this stemmed out, this point, I think people need to understand that in order to rank on SEO, it's not just the time, it's the effort you need to put into it. So this effort sometimes can be very pricey, and you need to put down a lot of money before you see a single dollar of return. And that's like a gatekeeper for many, many people. They cannot even participate into the SEO game. So when making this decision, I think that the budget and the budgetary constraint is the first one that needs to be tackled. And I think for many, going into Google Ads and establishing profitability in the Google Ads first is more important than doing SEO. They're just 2 different ball games. So once you are making money on the PPC, only then I would advise someone to move into an SEO, because it's a game of big pockets. If you don't have big pockets, like you can't compete. Like you can't. It's like going to the Olympics game, and you're going on a 100-meter sprint against Usain Bolt.
Yes.
Like you can't compete with that. You don't have those kind of legs. You're just not. Your genetics prevents you from getting there. So, like you can examine your competitor and see, like, okay, this is Usain Bolt. I can't really outrun this guy, but like you can go and find a keyword that you can kind of pick a fight on, and like I can outrun this guy, because I think the best The best way to understand SEO is like to think about the two guys that are in savannah running away from the lion. You don't have to be the fastest person in the world, but you just have to outrun the guy that's going to get eaten by the lion. So that's kind of like getting on the first page of Google is like you just have to outrun the slower people. And having a strategy where you can pick these races where you actually do stand a chance while you're building that topical authority and picking up your niche where you can drive some meaningful traffic and being of help to your readers, because it forces companies to not think anymore just like a marketer. It forces them to think more like a publisher and understanding how they're earning the visibility plus the traffic plus the visits. And then on top of that, utilizing these content opportunities and content traffic to prop up their product or to move them into a newsletter. And out of there, building the relationship further. So it's a very long game. And a lot of small businesses, they don't have what it takes to invest that kind of a intellectual know-how into building an SEO website. So if you're small, you're going to pay more for traffic, that's guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
But you will get something to work with straight away. And if you can't afford PPC, like, well, then you have to try some other growth hacking methods to drive your business. Like so you have to find that competitive advantage so you can stay in the game enough that you can start investing into SEO.
It feels weird though. Sorry to interrupt, but it feels weird because it's like I think people have it completely flipped. They're thinking we'll do SEO and then we'll afford some ads. And it's like you can't keep up with the SEO game. Like PPC, it's fixed. You pay, you see the results. It's relatively instantaneous, but it's very fascinating to see that I would feel that the vast majority of marketers are thinking SEO is something we can do, and then we'll get to PPC. Like,
so it could be the case when you're tackling a niche that is not saturated. But Google has been in existence 20, 25 years. And there are people that have been doing SEO for as long. So how are you going to compete with guys? And I know a few guys in my network that have 20 years of SEO experience. They've seen the algorithmic changes through thick and thin. I've witnessed death of many companies because of algorithm changes. So you can't just rely on SEO.
Wow.
You can't.
So speaking of story mode, do you have a Cinderella story about helping a client win in search and getting first row seats in the fairy tale theater? And then relatedly, do you have any horror stories? I mean, you just said that algorithm switches, boom, you're gone. Maybe switch into story mode and give us like a best case scenario and then like a worst case scenario.
So my first job straight out of college, 2010, 2011, we're buying backlinks. Backlinks are heavily weighed by Google's algorithm towards ranking. So if you, like back in the day, if you would type into Google, for example, download here, the Adobe Flash reader would show up. Because every website that had Flash had like download here Flash button. So if you were to search download here, you would get like Adobe Flash rank at the first page of Google. That's how heavily backlinks were weighed back then.
Wow.
And not just the backing, but the anchor text itself. So every SEO and their grandmother started utilizing anchor text optimization on the third-party websites, and then Google, I believe Google has this incredible big zoo of animals.
Yes, they do.
Updates.
Yeah, they do. Panda, penguin. It's a whole bunch.
I believe 2010 was the year when Penguin hit.
You gotta admit, I played this stinking city like a harp from hell.
it was a backlink related update. I don't have to remember every animal that Google came up
No,
with when
we
they were
can't
giving,
list them. Right.
when they were giving the names to their updates. But let's pull up Penguin and me seeing thousands of our websites getting indexed in real time, thousands, because we were utilizing anchor text rich scheme to get these websites to rank, and Google was just changing the algorithm slightly to remove the weight or to penalize the websites that are abusing the anchor text as a strategy, led to insane amounts of losses of website traffic.
Wow.
And that was like my first job ever. I just got out of college, graduated investment banking, and I'm like in SEO, and now I have to learn that Google is not fair. Like we put so much work into this. Like, why are they investing up for our game? But Google's game is not about us. It's about staying true to their users. Because if their users don't use their platform, they're losing revenue. So when I started like to understand that there's like these holes in the Google strategy, they always have a blind spot. There's always going to be a blind spot. I realized that there's always going to be room for SEO. The only trend that I can consistently confirm that has been happening since 2010 until today is that SEO is becoming more and more expensive. That was the most important like trend that never stopped happening. So they've identified the websites that were selling the links. They mapped them as content farms. So large networks of websites that were selling links just completely vanished overnight. So that's why, like before, the backlinking was like you going in and doing a checkout order in an e-commerce store, and boom, you have 1,000 backlinks. Oh, we need 200 backlinks. Okay, just go to linkwana.com or buy text links and stuff like that.
Right.
That was my first job. That's what I've been doing. And then there was like this big push towards content. And there was like the Panda update that was messing up the over optimization of content, keyword stuffing. People were doing a lot of keyword stuffing. But I would say that the biggest shift was 2018, 2019 with the BART algorithm update.
Yeah.
Where Google developed this knowledge graph and it completely changed the game. A majority of the content does not make the mark. And even to this day, I see that this algorithm update still carries a lot of weight, and it leaves a lot of opportunity, because finding the content writers that produce content of such quality and can correlate the content concepts with Google's knowledge graph is a little bit very cognitive capacity intensive. So you cannot get like average people to do an SEO job. That is a big barrier to entry. You need some really smart people to do SEO. It's not something that just about anyone can do. You cannot get like writers out of Kenya and expect them to produce an SEO level quality of content. But people still are trying. They are trying because if they get lucky, they may change the course of their entire company. And I worked in this company in Northbrook. It was a lead gen provider in title loan space. And once SEO traffic rains on your business, boy, it rains. Like you completely resolve your lead gen problem, and you don't have to pay anyone for those leads. And they are 5 times cheaper than pay-per-click leads. So you have an insane competitive advantage compared to any of your competitors out there. So making this investment into SEO is for bigger pockets, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And
well, it's for bigger brains too. I mean, you're pointing this out. It does seem like just put some content up, put some keywords in there, and you're fine. It is not that simple.
It is far from being simple at all. And that's one of the pain points. Even the good SEOs, sometimes they can encounter a blip on a certain keyword, and it takes a little bit of a time to get there.
Right.
Like when let's say that your content is perfect, and you are a topical authority on the subject matter that you're trying to rank for, and your competitor is the same, Google will use these other ranking factors like backlinks to determine who will go on the top. And then they will look at these other technical factors also to give some weight to where you will fall at the end of the day. So every page is being evaluated on 200 different ranking factors. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty of it, all you need to have is good content and links as two primary categories of how your website will be evaluated. I can give you one horror story.
Yes.
It's our own website.
Well, I mean, I thought there was a little horror stories sprinkled in there in the front, but yeah, take us to the horror show.
So this horror story came from a prospect that was interested in learning more about our services, and we evaluated their website. They had over 1,000 blog posts on their website. And our solution for this problem, we've seen back in a day, they changed their company a little bit. They're in B2B lending, so business loans, unsecured loans for the companies.
Okay.
And they had like some accounting related content on their site. And quite a lot of it. Seems like some previous bloggers that they hired were very keen about writing about accounting. I think one of their previous product was accounting related, but the company's strategy shifted more towards lending, and they had like over 1,000 article pieces, and they lost like 60% of the traffic they used to have. So we're looking at their STM rush, and we see like this massive drop, and they can't really explain it. But when we drill down to see the content, we gave them the advice that they didn't take, and their website kept tanking. And the marketing manager didn't really know SEO. SEO was like kind of like a challenge where the whole company had a lot of traffic that they've been consistently losing.
Mm-hmm.
So he couldn't really convince himself that my advice was a legit one. And I told him, sack all your content, just delete everything.
Wow,
it's not helping you. Like you're just getting this traffic that's not converting into leads. So
wow,
you don't need this traffic.
Wow.
You want to convince Google that you're an expert in lending. Like all these accounting related blog posts, they're non-strategically created content is just there. So like I'm yet to follow up with that prospect. It's happened like since last October till this year. So I'm like trying to see like how much of the advice that I originally gave them did they implement. But it was like a complimentary session, so I don't think they gave a lot of value to it. But I've been monitoring that nightmare. And like imagine you holding a job of a marketing director and there's traffic keeps dropping it. No matter what you do, because you don't have enough experience as to what you should be doing, you still work, spend money, spend resources, and seeing a negative. It's kind of like the buying a stock doesn't stop dropping.
Well, it's also hints to this point of strategic pivots in your product, and then you're saying, oh, we're going to add a new product, and a lot of people like to add on a whole bunch of products, new things. That might negatively impact your results. So even if you start talking about your new thing, Google's seeing all your old stuff, and it's saying this doesn't make sense. So it won't index you or present your blogs. I mean, is that sort of like there's a strategic...
Google just gets stuck and like asks itself, what the hell is this website about?
Yeah, right.
Like I have no clue what they're talking about. They're like all over the map. They're talking about accounting, then they're talking about lending.
Right.
And Google can pick up a website that's specific about lending, and they know that they have reliable pieces of information. They look into the knowledge graph and they know that these people know what they're talking about.
It's crazy.
So
I mean, but a product person would never talk to an SEO person. Why would I talk to you? We're working on our product. We're going to release it. It's going to be great. Just write a blog about it. I mean, it just kind of seems like, in a way, if SEO is this huge reliant thing, you get 5 times reduced versus PPC. SEO almost needs a seat at the strategic table.
I would say so, but I think that the easier way to combat that is to observe SEO as kind of like your publishing partner. And you have an editorial. And if you take a look at NerdWallet is a very good example of a content-driven company. And they've been publishing a lot of content. And they have SEO experts, they have authority experts in the world of personal finance. But these guys, they're dominating credit card as a keyword, and they're jacking up all these fees that they're earning from referring the credit cards to people.
Mm-hmm.
And these referral commissions are pretty decent. Banks are paying a top dollar for credit cards. And NerdWallet has absolutely been a dominant player in the credit card referral space while providing tons of value and tons of valuable free content for the readers. I don't know if there are people out there not reading NerdWallet, at least like the older content that was really good. They're really missing out on some hot takes in the personal finance world. But it's not just personal finance. They're like ranking now for business finance. They're like the number one authority on the topic of finance in general.
Wow.
And they started with the niche of personal finance, and they just kept growing and growing. And when they started making money on the credit cards, but that's an editorial. It's an editorial team. They have a bunch of writers, a bunch of SEO experts, and the only thing that they do is they refer people to credit cards, and they're making so mad money from that. Like, let me take a look. I'll open up an SEM Rush, kind of see where NerdWallet has been lately. We've been using it as a
like a reference point.
Like a reference point a lot. I have their traffic data all on SEMrush dating to January 2012, where they had 175,000 hits, which is attainable in today's SEO world. But today, even with the traffic drop they had like in the last couple of months, they have 20 million hits per month. 20 million hits. Like site, column, search, NerdWallet, Google index is 121,000 worth of pages off of that website.
Wow. Oh my God. And then speaking to that earlier point, how are you going to compete with NerdWallet? You know, you're a new company and that's the Usain Bolt moment right here, you know? So, I mean, it's like.
So, but the thing is, you can go deeper into clusters and start winning the smaller niches. You're competing in a smaller pond. Like, you can always compete in SEO, but you cannot be expecting NerdWallet's results without putting in the NerdWallet budgets. I think it's like a big jump for NerdWallet was 2019 when they hit the 10 million mark. You know, and they have a linear growth year over year. They had like a big drop in traffic, like God knows why, but like they don't have like a just and up curve. They have these fluctuations where some of their content gets de-indexed and they lose some of the rankings. And
wow.
It's not just only up game, but they've been doing a really good job, and they're still spending around, like, according to SEMrush data is not perfect, but it's like an approximation of what we're looking at. The same way that Google Search Console data is not reliable. Google hides a lot of data from you. They don't want you to know all the traffic they're sending to you. It doesn't correlate when you're looking at the other things that they're providing you the data with. You can see the discrepancies,
right,
and understanding of how Google is sometimes gaslighting you with false information, because Google Search Console is not the single source of truth for SEO.
Right.
It's just one of the angles that we have to consider when we're talking about the SEO performance.
Well, so and to that point, how much, monthly budget there for NerdWallet? What are they spending? I mean, approximately, or do you have a thought or a data point there?
Well, you kind of like understand that SEO, your biggest expense in SEO are humans, because you're hiring people to do the job, to emulate the machine. You might have some apps and tools and stuff like that, but then like this editorial team and these experts in the world of personal finance and people that are creating this stellar bomb content that people want to read, they're their expense. So whatever is on their balance sheet for the employee workforce is their SEO expenditure. Because they're not outsourcing their SEO to another agency. They hire an SEO, in-house SEO specialist. They hire depth consolidation authority expert on the writing, and like they're investing into the PR, which is yielding them really good, high authority, high quality backlinks that Google translates into trust towards their wallets websites, and that's why they're ranking so highly, because Google hold them in high esteem.
Wow.
Because of all these authority expert referrals and references. So
so it's an interesting take on this, that a very seemingly technical aspect of digital marketing is really reliant on human capital, human resources. Like you really have to.
As of now.
Oh, and here come the machines. Is that what you're telling me, Brian?
The machines are definitely coming. In our process, the writer's end that I talked to you about, and the machine learning, the machine generated content,
right,
is on its way in. So it's a battle of algorithms. Algorithms will adapt. It will force the software creators to adapt their algorithms. So now you have the battle of the people that are trying to get on the Google's search engine by utilizing data that Google has to show the cards on, so that they can use machine learning to use Google's publicly available data against Google in order to rank your site. So you'll have the battle of algorithms.
Wow.
And it's slowly but surely slipping away from the hands of the rank and file humans.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's just tragic. And now I'm scared. But so thinking towards the future, thinking towards the present moment, thinking towards people wanting to get the most for their budgets, all of this stuff that you've given us, tools that people can use, different ways to, kind of conceive of the algorithm changes, different ways to avoid those drops. There's so much that you've covered here. Is there one piece of advice that you would give the audience on SEO? If you could just consolidate it all down, what would be the one piece, Brian?
So SEO is a growth-centric strategy. If you have other competitive advantages that your business has, only then, when you have enough of a room in your budget to invest into SEO, only then I would move in that direction. That would be like for the bigger play and for the larger companies. But having some form of a SEO presence and having like a small constant investment into these longer tail keywords, you can really, these like small wins do stack up. So before you go all into SEO, have a smaller budget and try to really understand what is it that you're doing and how is it driving the results. Don't outsource that as a business owner to some marketing agency without really understanding what it is over there. Like dive deeper, have an understanding that this is a risky investment. Google's algorithm can change the next day. So you need to get your feet wet. And some of the results that you will gain, you might lose them tomorrow. It's not like 100% secure investment. But if you get the basics of understanding what will happen next, then you will feel more comfortable about investing in SEO. And that's probably the most important thing, because you can drive some really successful home runs. We talked about the nightmares, but the wins when you don't have to think about your lead flow, and your leads are costing you 5 times less. Like no one can compete with NerdWallet. Credit Karma and NerdWallet are absolutely dominant in the space. They are living off of the algorithm. Their entire existence is owed to the Google's algorithm. The discrepancy between the paid traffic to organic search traffic is 1 to 20. For every 20 hits of organic traffic, they're getting 1 hit of paid traffic, and they're paying $1 million for that paid traffic.
Wow. Woo! So this has been like mind-blowing. I can't believe the value that you've just obviously dumped on our shores. We're going to spend years cleaning up the knowledge that we've gained.
Thank you so much.
But if people want to connect with you and learn more about you online, how can they do that, Brian?
They can hop on to alphaefficiency.com. We offer complimentary 1-hour sessions for qualifying businesses and prospects. So you can hop on to alphaefficiency.com and schedule a call. And I'd be happy to hop on a call and kind of assess your situation. We're not doing just SEO. We provide web design, pay-per-click advertising, data modeling, and other services for our prospective clients. And I can promise you that you will have a 1 hour of really good time of learning more about your business from a different perspective and what you can do to gather some of the small wins that you can get and start from there.
Cheese or chocolate?
Are you ready?
All right, let's get ready. I'm getting my mind.
Don't clear your mind. Clear your mind. Okay, ready? Cheese or chocolate?
That's a tough one. Is that a first question or is that
That's the first one. Cheese or chocolate, and you have to choose one. I can see that you're really conflicted, but you got to choose one.
Let's go with cheese.
No judgment here. Okay, next one. SEO or LOL?
SEO all day.
All day. That's 5 times less clicks than LOL. I don't know who's ranking for LOL, but don't even go there. All right, here we go. Dinner with Steve Jobs or lunch with Bill Gates?
Steve Jobs all day. There's like undisputed.
Undisputed. It's probably be a nice dinner too. All right, travel back in time. Or
just 1 second, I wouldn't be alive for that one, or I would resurrect Steve Jobs like a Jesus.
Well, that's the problem. As I was writing that question, I was like, well, he is dead, but anyway. Yeah.
If I could pick and choose, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, next one, travel back in time or travel forward?
Forward.
Hike a mountain or swim a beach?
Hike a mountain.
All right, and finally, hoard or purge?
Hoard.
No problem there. Stack up those small wins and keep them all around you.
What Gets Measured is a NinjaCat podcast. Please rate and review the show wherever you find your podcasts. Share this episode on social and visit us on the web at ninjacat.io.